This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders who are designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and today I'm joined by Ksenia Yudina. Ksenia left a career in finance to become a fintech founder focused on one thing: helping families invest in their children's financial futures. She has lived the full startup arc, growth, pressure, and loss, and writes openly about what happens when ambition meets reality and control slips away. In her new book, One Venture, 10 MBAs, Ksenia explains why the real education of building companies comes from chaos, not credentials. This conversation is about identity, resilience, and how founders rebuild when the title no longer protects them. Ksenia, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, Joe, I'm good. Thanks so much for inviting. I'm excited to be here.
You're very welcome. And I'm excited for this conversation because you've had this amazing transition from having a day job to becoming an entrepreneur. But before we get into your journey, I wanted to ask you a question because I was just talking to someone this morning. Me and a friend of mine at work are first-time homeowners. And it's one of those things where after a while, when you're renting, things can get done for you very easily, and you just call a guy and they do it for you. But then when you get the house, all these things fall on your shoulders. Like we were talking about, like when you buy a house, like you got to buy window treatments for like 20-something windows. And you're like, wait a minute, I didn't know I had to do that. And the reason I bring this up, Ksenia, is I want to connect that to founding a startup. Because what happened, if you can remember, what happened back in your early startup days where you're like, wait a minute, I got to do that as a startup? Sort of like the homeowner, wait, I got to do that as a homeowner? What were a couple of things that you remember when you first made that jump to being a startup founder where you're like, I had no idea that this was involved?
Actually, Joe, this is a great analogy, the renting to the home ownership, because it's it's the same. When you have like a stable job in corporate, company, everything is solved for you, right? You have your team, your HR, your resources, your computer training, like everything is great. And once you, take that leap in the startups, you just bombarded by the questions and the problems and the challenges that you as an owner, as a founder, supposed to solve. So I just reflecting on my early days starting the first company, remember that I didn't even know where to start. I was like, should I, buy the domain name or hire a legal team? Like, should I be C Corp? Should I be the LLC? Where do I get my development team? Because I did not have any technical background, believe it or not. And everything just, I was just bombarded by all those issues. And it was very, very steep learning curve.
And tell me about that learning curve in terms of was there one that stands out where you were that came on later on? You're like, when you buy a house, something happens a year later, you're like, oh, now this? Was there something after that first year where you're like, wait a minute, I thought we already did all these growing pain things. I thought I hired the HR guy, I hired the CTO. What was one of those things that happened maybe a year or 6 months into your journey of an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'll probably give a couple examples, right? One is on the technical side, because coming from the corporate environment, having a vision for the company, and I can tell you a little bit more about the vision and the problem that we were solving. But I was thinking about it from the user perspective. So I was like, okay, the interface should be user friendly. It should be 5 minutes to set up the account. I'll just follow the steps in the application process, but I'll make it mobile friendly. What I didn't realize is that the biggest challenge is on the back end, under the hood. And if you don't think about that from the get-go, you might just spend months figuring out how to make it automated, how to connect APIs, that sort of thing. So if you don't have a technical background, that's a big aha moment. The second thing was probably about fundraising, because the fundraising for startups is like a fuel, and some founders, myself included, go into startups thinking oh, I can just bootstrap, I can self-fund, they're just gonna take a couple hundred thousand, it's not going to be that expensive, I'm just gonna deplete a little bit of my personal savings, and then 6 months later or 12 months later, you'd be like, oh my gosh, it's so expensive to build this house, to build a startup, so I do need to involve outside money, outside capital.
And I want to jump on that because I remember hearing you do a talk and you were talking about fundraising. And this has come up on this podcast. I'm sure conversations you've had, the idea of female founders and fundraising. I think there's a ridiculous stat where it's only 2% of VC funds go to females. It's something ludicrous. But you've made we all love analogies, like saying, but you compared fundraising to dating. Tell me about how that connects, how fundraising connects to dating.
Yeah, just like run through the numbers really quick. Again, just like to kind of remind your audience, your community, female founders in VC-backed startups only get about 2% of venture funding. Last year, I believe the stats was like 1.5%. So things kind of like going backwards a little bit. And in order to make it to Series B, for example, you are like, one of 10,000 female founders, right? So it's pretty interesting how that stats work, and I can discuss like some reasons why I think things are this way. But you're right. So I had to go through rounds of funding. So we raised, like angel round, seed extension, Series A, pre-Series B, and Series B. And I do compare fundraising to dating because you have to find the right type of investor. You have to find the right partner. Fundraising is not just remembering your pitch, kind of problem solution team, market size, but it's actually understand the person on the other side, right? Understand their motivations, understand how they are relevant to your business, why they would be the great partner for you, what they bring to the table, why they're excited. So just to give you like an interesting example from my own startup journey, the product or the platform that we were building was in family finance. So the mission was to help parents build a better future for their kids through accessible, simple financial solutions. And we developed this mobile app that made the creation of the account, 529 or another custodial account, super simple, like 5 minutes to set up. You can manage everything from your phone. You can get gifts from friends and family. And what I realized is that the problem didn't click with people who didn't have kids. But if I spoke with investors who actually were parents themselves, oh God, like it clicked immediately because they experienced this pain point on themselves. They would be like, saying things like, hey, like I struggled saving for my child. I'm so confused about these 529s. Why are they so complicated? Or, some people just don't understand, like financial, like kind of like asset allocations or investments like so much that they would prefer a platform to do the selection for them. But so it resonated with parents. And that was my big kind of learning, the big lesson. Don't just like pitch to the wide range of investors. Understand who will be resonating with your idea, and find kind of lookalikes. Find more people like that. Find more people who find your solution personally applicable.
Wow, that's good stuff. Yeah, and it's funny too because it reminds me because I remember years ago I spoke to Louisa Schneider, who started that ear piercing startup called Rowan, right? And she was telling me about the struggles of going to VC because, and I'm drawing this comparison to you because like you are a woman with doing a fintech, so you would think most VCs like get the idea of fintech. So in Louisa's case, she would go in and talk about ear piercings and she'd be the only woman in the room surrounded by like 10 other guys. And they're like, what? Ear piercings? What do you mean? How does that even work? And they were like, it was dumbfounded. So it was a struggle for her. But I'm shocked to think that you have this successful finance background. You've come up with this fintech platform that's going to solve a problem, and you still had trouble getting people to understand what it is. That to me still, I mean, I get sometimes that like not everyone lives in everyone else's shoes and all, you go put whatever metaphor in there, but it's like the idea of like VCs not understanding a fintech platform, it's just mind boggling to me.
Yeah, and like I said, like to me, like what really worked is like someone being a parent, and I was getting like all different kinds of feedback. Some people would say the market is too small. The other people would be like, oh, like no, the market is too large. The competition is not existing, so like no one is disrupting it. So that means there is no need for this product. And some investors would be like, there's so much competition, it's like unbelievable how you're gonna beat all of them. So it just for founder, it's important to just like remain focused, keep conviction, keep going, treat it as a dating process. Like not everyone's going to be saying a yes. If it's something important that you're trying to disrupt, that probably means that people still need to be educated about the importance of it, right? You have to position yourself as someone with domain knowledge, someone who's an expert, and also like make sure that investors understand that you are not alone on this journey, that there are other people like advisors, executive team who believe in this, and you bring them on this journey with you.
That's great. So you kind of alluded to what you ended up doing, but I want to take a step back in terms of like you have this finance career, you decide to make this jump into entrepreneurship. We talked about how surprising some of the twists and turns it took, but out of curiosity, Ksenia, when you make the jump, I call it the entrepreneurs conundrum, right? Find a problem, fix a problem, and again, like I said, you alluded to it, but what was the problem you identified? And how did you plan to fix it?
Yeah, so just like a quick rundown on my background because it's relevant, right? I spent about 20 years in finance after business school. So I got my MBA at UCLA Anderson. I had a CFA designation, which is like a golden standard in finance. And honestly, I didn't even think about starting a company. I was dreaming about a corporate career. So I ended up at a company called Capital Group. They manage about 3 trillion, so really large asset manager. I joined the private wealth division. And while at Capital Group, I spent 4 years there. I realized that there is like one common problem. All of our clients who were parents or grandparents, the number one priority was saving and investing for their children. But the solution at Capital Group wasn't very like user friendly. We still had to do everything through paperwork, which we FedExed or fax to our clients. It was like a lot of hand holding from us as financial advisors. And then at the same time, I started getting a lot of questions from my friends who graduated from top schools. They had student debt, and they were like, hey, we need something simple to start saving for our kids because we are bombarded with student debt. We want a different future for our kids. And I was like, gosh, there's nothing that exists in the industry like Robinhood or Venmo. And this new generation of parents demand a different solution. They demand extreme level of simplicity, extreme level of convenience. We all Amazon users, right? We want everything like right now. And finance, for some reason, especially family finance, still felt like very outdated. By the way, not much has changed since 2018. just
Right.
just FYI. But in 2018, it was like, oh my gosh, like why are we still like doing so many things like via faxes or like it requires meeting with financial advisor when 90% of people in the United States don't have access to financial advisors, right? And then I dove even deeper and I realized that 70% of people don't like never heard about 529, which at that time was the most popular account type. And I was like, well, everyone needs to have 520. Everyone needs to be saving for the kids. Everyone needs to be preparing for college. And my basically the idea was like, let's create something simple and intuitive to help parents save and invest for the future for the kids' future today, even if it's like $25 or $50 a month. With this like compounding and contributions from friends and family, they can grow a significant nest egg by the time the kids graduate into a real world, into adult life. And my vision as a founder was like, if the company is successful 10, 15 years from now, those kids will be free of the financial debt, right? Like of the student debt, credit card debt, and so on.
Wow, great stuff. And you talked about the struggles of, well, first making that leap from corporate to entrepreneurship, the struggles of fundraising, and then all of a sudden the company we're kind of discussing it is called UNest, and it pops. There's that $120 million valuation, but then that pesky pandemic happens, and the whole world is turned upside down. Which you go into the book, very transparent, open about warts and all of what happened there. And I don't want to give too much of away, but you went from building this, 9-figure company to almost losing it. Tell me about what it was like there, because again, we talked about these struggles that it took, and then all of a sudden it hits, and then it starts to crash down almost as soon as it hits. Tell me about that moment in your life.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was definitely like soul crushing moment, like right. Like I would say it was very difficult moment in my life. But let me just describe a little bit about the startup journey and kind of like what led to that point. Because to your point, we eventually we're able to get a lot of interest around the company and attract the right type of investors and get through all these rounds of capital. And we reached a point where we had 700,000 parents and kids on the platform. UNEST became de facto leader in family finance. So we kind of scratched the surface and we disrupted the industry. And my startup journey was filled with some typical challenges that any startup would experience, which I talk about in the book. But on top of that, I experienced some black swan events like pandemic and relocating the team during the war, the SVB collapse. And that's why I thought it's important to share those lessons. So what eventually happened, I think for any startup founder, it's important to remember kind of the big picture and where you're building in this like cycle, right? Like when interest rates are low, uh, capital is available, access to capital is there, but things can change overnight, and that's pretty much what happened with UNEST. We raised our latest round of funding at 120 million valuation in 2021 when fintech was popular, it was hot, it was desirable sector in the industry. And in 2022, market changed, right? Like, interest rates were rising. All of a sudden, like, access to capital wasn't that available to startups. And one thing that I've done during Series A is I took some venture debt from SVB. At that time, it sounded like a great decision because you take in venture debt, it's non-dilutive capital, it extends your runway, and I always say just like take the money when you don't need it, right? Because there is like not such a thing as like too much money for startup, especially for founder like myself. But when we took the money during the Series B round, uh, from SVB, that pretty much led to the pretty significant consequences. Because what I didn't realize that when market changes, that venture debt, going back to your analogy about the house, right? It becomes like a mortgage on the house. Like if you look at the waterfall, like who actually controls the company? Like the bank, the debt holder controls the company. And then there are preferred stakeholders. And then you as a founder and the team basically at the bottom of this waterfall in terms of control and how much say you have around the destiny of the company. I think it's a very good lesson to know for all founders who start in the companies or if they are in the middle of their journey. It's never too late to think about the capital structure and different stakeholders and where they sit in this decision making. Because what eventually happened with UNEST when market turned and things were difficult, SVB had a lot of say in terms of like what's going to happen with the company. Despite the metrics, despite all the success we achieved, despite the fact that we were growing 10 to 15% month over month, they decided, not to give us any like breathing room on the venture debt. And for several months, the company was kind of stuck between investors who were about to give us extra money and SVB who said, like we wouldn't budge on our debt. So investors were kind of like scared if they give extra money, the SVB can just like take the money. They had a ability to do so. So the company just got into this like unfortunate situation because of capital structure control and this waterfall. And eventually, what happened? The new investor group came over. They gave money to the company, but at kind of like not very favorable terms. And the executive team voted against this hostile takeover, against this offer, because we also had another option on the cap table. But we got outvoted by investors. So again, like if you think about this decision making kind of waterfall, right? Like SVB was like number one entity that had a key to the house. They controlled decisions, so they had the first say. The second was preferred shareholder, the investor group, and pretty much the executive team who knew what's best for the company, for the product, for the team. We had like the right intentions in mind. We basically got outvoted when there was like the difficult moment, the decision moment.
And you were basically thrown out of your own company, essentially.
Yeah, so it was my decision to step down.
Okay.
So like I wasn't fired, but the next morning, like when you wake up, right? Like the feeling that you go through as a founder is like you like losing a baby, right? You pretty much, I spent 5.5 years building this company day and night, like no weekends, no evenings, the sacrifices. I didn't see like my own family, right? And then like the next morning you wake up and you're like, I know that no one will ever feel so passionately, like so emotionally involved in this company, in this entity, like the founder. So I definitely felt like they ripped the piece of my soul away.
Wow. And let me ask you, because I think an entrepreneur who might listen to your story, read your book, might be like, well, that's only because of a black swan event. That's because of like some sort of financial meltdown that was out of my control, the pandemic. If Let's go ahead and just do the sliding doors thing, Ksenia. If those two things, I guess the two is the black swan event and that little financial crunch there. Do you think if that didn't happen, you would still be smooth sailing CEO of Unest, or do you think just because of the structure that you had built in terms of the borrowing of money that inevitably the blank was going to hit the fan and people would come in and do a hostile takeover?
Yeah, I think the reason why this story and the book is so relevant right now is because we live in very uneasy times economically, geopolitically, right? Like we don't know how next year gonna unfold. There are a lot of like uncertainties, a lot of turbulence in the market. So I don't think personally that pandemic was like one-off event or the SVB collapse was one-off event. I believe that the startup life, the founder life, is filled with like ups and downs, and it's always a roller coaster. And what any founder should do at any point is to build the company to last, build a company that will be resilient in the hard times, right? Just to prepare for those black swan events. That and what I mean by that, like just some learnings from my own journey is I would definitely think hard about capital structure, the board structure, the like who controls, who is decision maker. Like if things get tough, I wouldn't take the venture that, right? And definitely would get like the right partners on the board, and maybe like think about giving the board observer rights versus the board seats. Like there are a lot of things that any startup founder can do at any point, even like when they just start getting started, to anticipate some black swan events that may happen down the line and make sure their company lasts. Another thing to think about, sometimes investors may push founders into growth at all costs, right? Because what investors want to do for you to become the market leader, to remove any competition, right? To win the market share. And sometimes to do that, the startups need to run extremely fast and burn cash. But I think any founder and CEO should be saying like, what if things go wrong, right? Like maybe this is not a very sustainable way to grow. And the most sustainable way is to get to profitability faster so the founder can control their own destiny.
So good stuff. So now you decide. So you walk away from your baby, like you call it. What was next for you? Were you contemplating going back to corporate? Were you like, let me try entrepreneurship again? Was there a break in between there? Tell me about that sort of like, I'm sure sort of like hazy and clouded period of your life. Tell me about that sort of that point where I guess they call it an inflection point. Like what did you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I probably took like a few months to just like consider what to do next. And as they always say, like, if you go through something like that, like dramatic, right? Like, don't make any decisions for like 6 months because you still like may feel, a bit emotional and maybe like you jump into the wrong decision. So I was just like, talking to people. I actually tried to go back and save the company like through management buyout. Me and my business partner Peter Mansfield, we started talking to some experts, restructuring guys, new investors, existing investors, came up with a plan of, hey, like, let us try to repurchase the assets, turn the company around because no one else besides us can do the right thing for Nest. But the new investor blocked the deal. So that was my kind of first reaction: just go there and save the baby, like get it back, do something, do right by users, by team, by product. So, but that deal was blocked. And then, like, honestly, I didn't contemplate to kind of going back to corporate, because like once you're a founder, you're always a founder, right? Like I learned so much. It was such a it was an exciting journey, right? Like I wouldn't trade it for kind of more boring corporate life. I mean, it's very comforting, right? When everything is taken care for you by someone else. But I already caught that entrepreneurial bug. And when that settled, right, I was thinking to myself, you know what? I still believe in this mission. I believe that our journey was interrupted for the wrong reason. I still believe that the opportunity is huge and the market is there. And there is still a lot of families around the United States and internationally that feel the same way for their kids. They want to build a better future for the children. I do not think that UNEST in the existing shape and form can achieve that vision. So what Peter and I decided to do is to have another shot on the same opportunity. So we built another company. It's called Most. We founded it about 12 months ago, and we're doing it again.
Wow, that's so awesome. Now, let me ask you, it's because it's very Steve Jobsian, because when he got pushed out of Apple, he started another computer company. Did you have people in your sphere, maybe friends, family, colleagues, that once you brought up the idea most, were you like, Ksenia, you've already been through this. Can't you try something else? Like, why put yourself through this? Not to not be an entrepreneur anymore or be a founder, but why try the same kind of company? Or maybe you had some hesitation about trying to, what do they call it, to avoid a sophomore slump?
Around me, I did not have those people who would be like naysayers or like wouldn't believe in me, because I think they've observed firsthand what we've accomplished at UNEST, right? And they also believe in the mission. There are not that many startups that are very mission driven, right? That have the vision like that can change the world, like in the literal terms, like make this whole generational wealth transfer smooth, and help several millions of kids around the globe, or at least around the US. So they definitely were supportive of the mission. Everyone felt that it was very unfair what happened to UMass. Everyone was kind of in the same boat of like, hey, you did everything you could to save the company, to do the right thing. It was for the wrong reason. So there was a lot of understanding why I'm trying to do it again. And there was a lot of um appreciation for the lessons learned, because the second time you try something, you don't have to do it the hard way. You can do it like in a faster, in a more efficient way. For example, at UNES, when we were building the product, we were disrupting this complex industry. We had to change the backend 4 times. And by the way, the users were jumping with us like from platform to the platform, which proved to me there is a real product market fit. When users are sticking with you through like hard times, it really says something about the need for the problem, and the pain point that we're solving. So the second time around, I was like, I know exactly where to go for the right type of infrastructure, for the right type of backend provider, for the right type of APIs. I definitely want to build it like with international focus from day one, so it's not just restricted to the US. So we found a provider that has like 70% of their clients are international, because in my mind was like, despite of your income level, despite of geography, parents feel the same way for about their kids, and there is no market leader in the space, right? And I was immediately thinking that, gosh, right now we also have AI, right? Like that can make our customer support so much better, and portfolio recommendations and constructions. And that wasn't available in 2018. So I was even more excited about the product and the new like improved version, like the 2.0 version of what we can build. And what was interesting, and what I'm probably most excited about, when we started Most, in few months, we've heard that the federal government is implementing the product that was my vision back in 2018. So like listen to that. It's crazy to me, right? Because it was like on the back burner for everyone. But right now the federal government comes out and says, you know what? We passing this Invest America Act as a part of our big beautiful bill. And no matter how anyone can think about new administration, this is very bipartisan, right? Like they try to do the right thing for the families. And the government says we're going to contribute $1,000 into every newborn born in the United States. And it's going to be tax advantaged account, but not just for education. Exactly what we decided to do at Vinasti Venture, not just for education, not just for college. And friends and family can contribute. Exactly our gifting feature. We also had the gifting capability for friends and family contributing money into child's account. They decided that employers can provide matching contributions, which was not something that we had available in the industry. So it's like 401k moment for the parental savings. And I'm like, wow, this is like a real gift that now this vision is supported on the government level. So it's kind of like just validated the point and validated that whatever we're building is right. And there are a lot of people behind it. And the last thing about this program that kind of was really, really exciting to me at the end of last year, that Michael Dell contributed 6.5 billion into this. There are a lot of like billionaires and philanthropists who jump into this program to help underserved kids.
That's great. And so, earlier we joked about how fundraising is very much like dating, and in your real life dating, things worked out very well for you, Ksenia, because I always take folks behind the dedication of the book, and you dedicate your book to my husband, whose unwavering support has carried me through every battle, proof that behind every strong woman is a man who believes in her unconditionally. Tell me about your husband, the part he's played in your life, and why it was important for you to dedicate the book to him.
Yeah, so from the first decision of starting the company, like he was my go-to person to discuss, the pros and cons and whether I should take it. And he unconditionally always supported me. He was always a yes, like, yes, go for it. Yes, I believe in you. Like, even when I doubted myself, he was there by my side, right? And every single battle that I had to go through as a founder, because in my view, the definition of startups is the bunch of challenges we have to address every day. So it was a challenging journey. He was there by my side. He always told me that how much he believes in me. And probably that support was one of the most important things that was keeping me going.
Wow, that's so great. And you can read all about it in One Venture, 10 MBAs, a warrior guide to building startups. She is Ksenia Yudina. Ksenia, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Ksenia and our other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.